has broken like the first morning. Blackbird has spoken like the first bird. Praise for the singing, praise for the morning, praise for the springing fresh from the word. Sweet the rains to fall, sunlit from heaven, like the first dew fall on the first grass. Praise for the sweetness of the wet garden, sprung in completeness where God's feet pass. Mine is the sunlight, mine is the morning, born of the one light, Eden saw play. Praise with elation, praise every morning, God's recreation of a new day. Morning has broken like the first morning. Blackbird has spoken like the first bird. Praise for the singing, praise for the morning, praise for the springing fresh from the word. Sweet the rains to fall, sunlit from heaven, like the first dew fall on the first grass. Praise for the sweetness of the wet garden.
Welcome to our worship service. Let's settle into our spaces, taking a deep breath in and out. As Unitarian Universalists, we believe we are all connected in this world, and we value the worth and dignity of each and every person. We pull on the wisdom of many sources to teach us, guide us, and help us understand this world. As we prepare our hearts for worship, let us remember our connections through our collective chalice lighting words. Please join me. In the light of truth and the warmth of love, we gather to seek and seek to share. Our opening words today is the Cascade UU Fellowship Mission Statement. We seek inspiration and understanding, embrace all on their individual spiritual journeys, and serve our local and world communities. Come, let us worship today. Please raise your voices and spirit in our opening hymn. We begin again in love.
We enter community intentionally, living with grace and love each day. We enter community, beloved community. We celebrate our values on our way. Listening and speaking, embracing joys and sorrows. We share our gifts and strength in service to the world. And when we fall, we forgive and begin again in love. We enter community intentionally, living with grace and love each day.
Let it be a dance we do. Let me have this dance with you. Through the good times and the hard times too. Let it be a dance.
As we are planning our spring rituals of turning on the sprinklers in the lawn or planting the gardens, we need to include our financial pledge to our church. We're halfway through the stewardship campaign, and we've gotten about a fourth of our pledges in as compared to last year. Not that we won't take pledges after the 23rd of April, but it makes the process of setting up a budget for the next year that much easier for the treasurer if they know what they're working with. So please get your pledges in and let it be a dance.
Our first reading is the 7 UU Principles. We are guided in our beliefs, morals, and values by our 7 principles, which all UU congregations have agreed to affirm and promote. The inherent worth and dignity of every person. Justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. Acceptance of one another and encouragement to spiritual growth in our congregations. A free and responsible search for truth and meaning. The right of conscience and the use of the democratic process within our congregations and in society at large. The goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. Respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. Our second reading is from our congregational covenant. We enter beloved community intentionally, living our values with grace, love, and celebration. We do this by listening with kindness and respect, speaking honestly with sensitivity, acting with compassion and acceptance, embracing our joys and sorrows, encouraging each other's spiritual journey, sharing our gifts and strengths in service to the greater good. When we fall out of covenant, we recognize, reflect, and re-engage. We forgive and begin again in love.
I invite you into a time of meditation and reflection. Take a deep breath in and out. Settle into your seat and plant your feet firmly on the floor. Think of the guiding words in our mission, principles, and covenant we as a community have chosen to shape us. What are the values that stand out? Are there values we embrace willingly? Are there values that challenge us? What is missing? Is everyone represented? How do these words call you to embody your faith in the world? Take a few moments to contemplate these questions and think about the guiding words. They'll show up on the screen here for you to look through and think about for the next couple of minutes.
If you see something that's wrong, raise your hand and say that's wrong. Point it out and name that thing by its name. Don't stand by and stare. If it's wrong, it's your affair. Don't be quiet, make a riot, be a pain. Be a pain, shout about it and complain. Ignore the crowd and go against the grain. Don't be polite, raise your voice and do what's right. Be a pain, be a pain, be a pain. When Rosa Parks sat on that bus, she chose to make a fuss. She chose to break the rules and take the blame. Her choice to sit and fight helped to bring on civil rights, because one strong woman chose to be a pain. Be a pain, shout about it and complain. If they say you have to move, say I'll remain. Don't be polite, raise your voice and do what's right. Be a pain, be a pain, be a pain. Harvey Milk, he chose to run for the council board and won, even though folks said you can't because you're gay. One brave LGBTQ elected leader ran and knew you can change things if you choose to be a pain. Be a pain, shout about it and complain. Tell 'em I won't let you make me feel ashamed. Don't be polite, raise your voice and do what's right. Be a pain, be a pain, be a pain. Tennis star named Billie Jean told the world she had a dream that men and women would be paid the same. She refused to hit that ball till there was equal pay for all. She was a king because she was a royal pain. Be a pain, shout about it and complain. If they refuse to pay, refuse to play the game. Don't be polite, raise your voice and do what's right. Be a pain, be a pain, be a pain. Kids from Parkland led the fight for something they all knew was right. They said it's time for us to finally make a change. If adults can't compromise, we must go march for our lives. They spoke out and led the charge. They all were pains. Be a pain, shout about it and complain. When you're faced with laws you know are just insane. Don't be polite, raise your voice and do what's right. Be a pain, be a pain, be a pain. Oh, be a pain, shout about it and complain. Ignore the crowd and go against the grain. Don't be polite, raise your voice and do what's right. Be a pain, be a pain, be a pain.
Currently, our theme is embodying our values. We have created or adopted words that have guided us in determining what our values are. Those guiding words are found in our mission, principles, and covenant, which you have heard earlier and have reflected on now. Before we can determine what we value, we need to define what value is. A value is something we deem important, worth our time, and useful. In addition, a value is something we view as a top priority and acts as a standard for how we want to shape our community. If we look at our guiding words and view them through the lens of this definition of value, then we can determine the following items as a value of CUF. We value communication through understanding, listening, acceptance, encouragement, speech, and honesty. We value service to each other, to our CUF community, to our local community, and to our worldwide community, and are called into that service by a greater good. We value individuals in their spiritual journey, in their worth and dignity, and in their joys and sorrows. We value community through our actions to promote the democratic process and working towards justice, equity, and compassion. We know that in community we are all interconnected, not just fellow humans, but with all things that make up our world and universe. We value education through spiritual growth and the search for truth and meaning. We value the need to acknowledge we are not perfect, and there are times we need to recognize, reflect, and re-engage in our ability to forgive and begin again in love. So what does it mean to truly embody these values, to try and live into them each and every day? I think of the bracelets that were popular many years ago that said, "What would Jesus do?" There was a UU version. It went, "What would you do?" Doesn't have the same ring to it. However, the idea behind it is that it reminds us to live our values each and every day, something that we have with us, whether it be a bracelet or a pendant, as a reminder. How often, when you make a decision, do you intentionally bring your UU lens to that decision? Do you ask yourself, what would the guiding values of CUF advise me to do? I remember having this type of wrestling with values when I wore a clergy collar in public for the first time. First off, I find turtlenecks constricting, so wearing a collar was definitely a challenge for just the physical sensation of it, and it also meant I knew it was there. Second, I realized I could no longer fly under the radar in a public setting about being a minister, which meant I had to be clear and intentional about the values I wanted to prioritize when I interacted with others. Not just the values of Unitarian Universalism, but also the values behind ministry and the values that are important to promote women in ministry. What would it be like for you to have a physical reminder of the guiding values at CUF that others could observe? What would that physical item be, and how would you know it was there? How would others know what it meant? When we embody our values, it means we live them in a way they can be witnessed by others. I love the way our board president, Deb Miller, describes how she guides people to CUF. She talks about how she lives her faith fully in all she does, and by doing that, others start to take notice and ask questions. Another way to look at what we value is what might be missing in our list of values. This past year, many of you have done work in groups and individually to support racial justice, land acknowledgement, and climate justice. You've learned the history of our area regarding Native Americans. You've learned about white privilege and power. You have learned of the systems at play in our society that are unjust and inequitable. We have hints of these ideas in our guiding words, however, nothing specifically spelled out. Nothing specifically calling us to the greater work of justice and repair. This spring, there are several projects under consideration to remedy these missing pieces. One is a statement about racial justice, which will be presented to the congregation to consider adopting at the next congregational meeting. This statement was created by the 2 racial justice groups that have been studying these issues regularly. At a national level, there's an effort to look at our 7 principles through the lens of anti-oppression, anti-racism, and multiculturalism. There's a question on whether to add an 8th principle to specifically call us into the work of racial justice, to name it as a value. In working with the local Piscosa people, or as some of you know them, the Wenatchee people, we are creating a land acknowledgement statement to put on our website as well as part of our worship services. We have witnessed this in all of our worship services we have attended by other congregations, as well as those services created by the UUA. By creating the land acknowledgement, we take a first step in recognizing the value of acknowledging not just our congregation's history, but the history we are interconnected with in this valley. We also have a group who are working on climate justice and what it means for our congregation to step into that fully responsible as individuals and a community. Kimbris, Ronnie, and Lori will be hosting a group to talk more about this after the service next Sunday, April 18th. Finally, although our current guiding values do not mention them, the foundation of our congregation was built on providing religious education to our children and youth. It has been a struggle for me to figure out how and when we can responsibly reopen our building. One of the nagging questions I keep asking myself is, what is the priority? Is it for all the adults to be able to gather? Or is it important to find ways for our children and youth to gather, especially since they are unable to be vaccinated yet and have struggled the most in trying to stay connected to the church during this time? Throughout my time here, the value of children and youth has been a struggle. There has been a struggle for space, a struggle for professional staff, a struggle for resources and volunteers. What would it look like in our guiding values to add children and youth as a priority? What would it mean to truly embody that value? As a church community, when we make values a priority, it means we have to sometimes sacrifice our own individual wants for the greater good. I remember making the decision that space for the children was so important that I made my office available and safe for them to use while we were in worship. I remember Dick and Pearl thinking it was a value to welcome every person into the fellowship, and so they made it their mission to greet people and take them out to lunch at times. I remember when Jeff Lau thought it was important to Cuff that they had updated financial software and spent hours of his time setting it up. I remember when Christina Davitt thought it was important we have quality worship, and so stepped up to not only train people, but create services. I remember the countless times people in this congregation have helped one another through acts of caring. In order to be a part of a church community and truly embody the values that community needs, we all have to fully embrace trying to live those values to our fullest potential. It also means we have to be intentional in asking the questions, what are we missing in our values, and what are we not fully embracing? When we are able to do this, then we are able to fully realize the vision of an intentional, beloved community and realize our responsibility as co-creators for making it happen. May we be reminded each and every day our connections to Cuff and what its values call us to do. May it be so. Let us pray. Spirit of love, forgive us in those times we have fallen short of living into our values. Remind us we are responsible for co-creating the world we want to see. Celebrate with us those times we fully embrace and embody our vision. We are grateful for the community we have created and continue to create. Amen. Please raise your spirit and voice in our closing hymn, I'm Gonna Walk It With You.
It looks like it might be a hard road, but I'm gonna walk it with you. And I know you might have a heavy load, but I can carry some too. I will lift you up when they push you down. I will raise my voice and stand my ground. Well, it looks like it might be a hard road, but I'm gonna walk it with you. Like it might be a long night, but I ain't going nowhere. And I know it's gonna be a hard fight, but I will stay right here. I will shine a light in the darkest hour. I will face the man in the tallest tower. Well, it looks like it might be a long night, but I ain't going nowhere. In the name of love, I will speak, I will shout, I will sing into the skies above. Well, it looks like it might be a perilous climb, but I will follow your lead. And I know it might be a long time till the last one of us is free. But I will hold on tight, stay by your side. This whole damn ride. Well, it looks like it might be a perilous climb, but I will follow your lead. Well, it looks like it might be a hard road, but I'm gonna walk it with you. And I know you might have a heavy load, but I can carry some too. I will lift you up when they push you down. I will raise my voice and stand my ground. Well, it looks like it might be a hard road, but walk it with you. That's right. I'm gonna walk it with you. That's right. I'm gonna walk it with you. I will walk, I will climb, shine my light up the whole night through. Because it looks like it might be a hard road, but I'm gonna walk it with you.
May we intentionally live into the values we proclaim to ourselves and our community. Love be with you. Please join in our collective chalice extinguishing words. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Please raise your hands in the spirit of connection for our closing song.
Carry the flame of peace and love until we meet again. Carry the flame of peace and love until we meet again. There is always a light when we are ready to see it. There is always a light when we are ready to be it, to see the light, to be the light, to raise our eyes in the dark of night, to climb this hill, together we will. There is always your light in the dark. We are ready to see it. There is always your light in the dark. We are ready to be it, to see the light, to be the light, to raise our eyes in the dark of night and be a gift. Together we will. There is always your light. There is always your light. We are ready to see it. There is always your light. There is always in the dark. We are ready to be it. To see the light, to be the light, to raise our eyes in the dark of night and be a gift. Together we will. There is always light. There is always dark. There is always light. There is always dark. To see the light, to be the light, to raise our eyes in the dark of night and be a climb this hill. Together we will. There is always shine your light. There is always in the dark. There is always shine your light. There is always in the dark.